Tonight, an NDIS overhaul. States and territories give the green light for the government to curb spending. Good evening and welcome to ABC News Victoria. I'm Tamara, Oudyn. Also tonight, the Obamas make their message clear, throwing support behind Kamala Harris and taking aim at Donald Trump. A food delivery rider among the victims in another horror period on Victorian roads. And Houston, we have a problem. Port Adelaide's Dan Houston handed a 5-match ban. The National Disability Insurance Scheme is set for a major overhaul after the federal government secured support from the states and territories. The changes are aimed at reducing rising costs of the $35 billion scheme. But the disability community is demanding a rethink.
After months of hard-fought negotiations with the states and territories, finally a breakthrough.
These are the first and most significant co-governance changes since the inception of the scheme a decade ago.
Labor's proposed changes are designed to rein in the ballooning cost of the NDIS.
It's growing at an unsustainable rate.
Costs projected to grow by 14% a year would be reduced to 8% through a system based on need rather than diagnosis. Greater government powers to seize any account suspected of fraud and a new definition of what constitutes an NDIS support that's still to be negotiated with the states and territories.
We already provide significant additional support. We want to make sure that the federal government continues to recognise that as we move forward with the future changes to the NDIS.
To get the states on board, they've been offered faster decision-making on new NDIS rules and a move from unanimous to majority support from premiers and chief ministers for rule changes with significant impacts on people with disability. In terms of the budget, the stakes for the government are high, but not as high as they are for the community. For many, the NDIS is what gives them safety and independence, and major disability representative organisations are urging senators to vote against this legislation tomorrow.
Minister Shorten has been talking about making an agreement with the states and territories, which is great, but we were not there and we're not at the table.
We're not scared of change, but we are scared of this bill. It puts our lives and our freedom and our rights in danger.
The reality is that what we are doing is securing the future of the scheme, and that is what matters.
The legislation is expected to pass the Parliament with coalition support. Claudia Long, ABC News, Canberra.
Politicians could soon be suspended from Parliament, kicked off powerful committees and even fined up to 5% of their salary if they're found to have engaged in misconduct. A new independent commission is set to be established nearly 4 years after a damning report was handed down about the toxic culture of federal parliament.
Modernising old institutions takes time and will.
This legislation today is designed to move our parliament forward one more step.
A step towards a workplace that actually sets the standard for others.
Every other workplace in the country has these standards of behaviour and Parliament should too.
For the first time in the history of Parliament, codes of conduct for politicians and staffers have been written and endorsed. Now they'll be enforced. An independent Parliamentary Standards Commission is set to be established to investigate serious misconduct and sanction the culprits, including MPs and senators themselves.
The sanctions we're looking at are suspension, removal from a parliamentary committee or a fine. They are, plus, I guess, the transparency that comes with this process.
While investigations will be kept secret, it'll be up to Parliament's 13-person Privileges Committee and ultimately the Parliament to determine which penalty should apply.
For years, politicians have behaved badly and got away with it, but that changes today.
It's the final recommendation of Kate Jenkins' landmark 2021 report, which lifted the lid on bad behaviour at Parliament House. A report triggered by the alleged rape of former staffer Brittany Higgins inside a ministerial office.
A set standard report found that bullying, harassment, other complaints were common in this workplace, and we're trying to change that.
Cultural change is happening here, albeit slowly. Parliament's adopted more family-friendly sitting hours and a new workplace support service has been set up, bringing an HR service to a building that lacked one. But in an atypical workplace where conflict is embedded, some reckon there's still room to lift the tone of debate.
The shouting, the mocking, the name-calling.
I have never stood in a boardroom and been yelled at.
Jane Norman, ABC News, Canberra.
America's former First Family has taken centre stage as the Democratic Party continues its 4-day-long party celebrating its presidential candidate. Barack and Michelle Obama received rapturous applause as they heaped praise on Kamala Harris and scorn upon Donald Trump.
The president who broke barriers.
I'm feeling fired up.
Arguing for history to be made again.
We have a chance to elect someone who has spent her entire life trying to give people the same chances America gave her.
While he heaped praise on Harris, he was scornful of the man she's up against, Donald Trump.
There's the childish nicknames, this weird obsession with crowd sizes.
The 44th president was introduced by his wife, who's also wildly popular with the Democratic base.
America, hope is making a comeback.
Michelle Obama also skewered the man who replaced her husband as commander-in-chief back in 2017.
His limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of two hard-working, highly educated, successful people who happen to be black. Who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
What was your highlight?
Oh, Michelle Obama, definitely.
Of course, the Obamas in their speech.
Alabama.
Kamala Harris was already the official nominee.
Georgia. How do you cast your vote?
So this year, the roll call was only symbolic, but still enthusiastically embraced by delegates. The Democratic Party's pick was beamed in from a rally in the neighbouring swing state of Wisconsin.
They have nominated Coach Walz and me to be the next vice president and president.
Her Republican rival was also on the campaign trail in another Midwest swing state, Michigan.
We're here today to talk about how we are going to stop the Kamala crime wave.
Kamala Harris had a rapid and unusual path to the top of the party ticket. That means this convention doesn't feature the acrimony or resentment often left over from a bruising primary. Perhaps the most important gift the departing Joe Biden gave his anointed successor is a party seemingly extraordinarily united.
Democrats drawing inspiration from their past glory.
Yes, she can.
And hoping they can pull off what until recently seemed an unlikely victory. Carrington Clark, ABC News, Chicago.
The search is continuing for 6 people believed to be trapped in the hull of a luxury yacht that sank during a storm off the coast of Italy. Deep-sea divers from the Italian Coast Guard are scouring the wreckage near Sicily. It's about 50 metres underwater, so for safety reasons, recovery crews can only stay for 12 minutes at a time. So far, 1 body has been recovered. Mike Lynch, one of Britain's best-known tech entrepreneurs, is among those missing. It's believed the super yacht was struck by a tornado over the water which caused it to capsize and sink quickly. Russia says it's shot down nearly a dozen Ukrainian drones headed for Moscow in one of the largest attacks on the Russian capital. Dozens more were shot down over Russian border regions where Ukraine has been targeting critical infrastructure like bridges and oil depots. Meanwhile, Moscow is continuing to apply military pressure in Ukraine's east and south, where a 14-year-old boy has died after a rocket attack.
This kiosk ablaze in what is normally a sleepy southern Ukrainian village. Locals say soccer practice had just got started nearby when a Russian shell fell directly onto it. After the explosion, players and spectators scattered.
The children that were injured were here. They didn't speak at all because they were in shock. We took everyone out immediately.
In Ukraine's northeast, residents have been enduring some of their most difficult days. The precarious calm in this region gone since Kyiv's cross-border offensive began.
I've never heard such explosions. I went outside last night, it was burning over there, and the sky was red.
A A fortnight on, the Ukrainian military continues its advance on Russian soil, claiming it now controls nearly 100 settlements in Kursk. The operation has boosted Ukrainian soldiers' morale, but it's not clear how much the allies abroad support it. Volodymyr Zelensky revealing he didn't talk to Washington as his government planned the attack.
When it comes to what their longer-term objectives are here, that's something that we're still discussing with them. And I would say, generally speaking, though, Russia has really struggled to respond.
Vladimir Putin may not be close to winning the war against Ukraine, but he has a history of military success. His tough guy image has made him popular with many Russians.
You have an inner need to defend this country and such courage. We're so proud of you.
Chechnya was Putin's first victory. Now the once separatist Chechens are fighting for Moscow in Ukraine. Putin's visit a reminder of past glories, even as his troops today struggle against a much more formidable foe. Catherine Diss, ABC News.
The US Secretary of State has left the Middle East with an agreement between Israel and Hamas still elusive. Antony Blinken and mediators from Egypt and Qatar have pinned their hopes on a US bridging proposal aimed at narrowing the gaps between the two sides. Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister met with right-wing groups of families of fallen soldiers and hostages in Gaza who oppose a ceasefire deal. It came as the IDF released video that purportedly shows the operation to recover the bodies of 6 hostages taken in Hamas's October 7 attack. It brings fresh grief for those Israelis who want Benjamin Netanyahu to agree to a ceasefire and bring the more than 100 remaining hostages home. In Gaza City, Palestinian health authorities say at least 10 people were killed in an Israeli strike on a school housing displaced people. Back home now, and the woman charged with murdering 3 relatives after feeding them a deadly meal of beef Wellington and poisonous mushrooms will face a trial next year. The case made global headlines last year after Erin Patterson served the meal to family members who went to her house in Leongatha for lunch. Heather Wilkinson and Don and Gail Patterson died. Local church pastor Ian Wilkinson was the only guest to survive. Today, in Victoria's Supreme Court, it was announced Ms Patterson's trial will take place in late April in the regional Victorian town of Morwell. Ms Patterson has pleaded not guilty and has previously denied trying to cause any harm to her loved ones. After a horror 48 hours on Victorian roads, safety advocates are calling on drivers to slow down and pay attention. Among the victims, a sports journalist and a delivery rider, who are now part of the growing list of lives lost on our roads.
It's a scene that's become all too familiar. Police combing through evidence, this time after an alleged hit and run involving a food delivery rider.
We have these incidents night after night. It's on a weekly basis where we have a collision and the driver's failing to stop, and it's just not good enough.
Members of the public helped the 27-year-old cyclist as best they could, but he died at the scene. A man has now been charged with drink driving and failing to stop. A spokesperson for DoorDash said, "Our hearts are with the rider's loved ones during this horrible tragedy. We've reached out to Victoria Police to assist with bringing those responsible to justice." The man is one of 5 lives lost on Victorian roads in the past 48 hours. In Richmond, floral tributes have been laid for Herald Sun sports journalist Sam Landsberger, who was hit by a truck yesterday morning. The AFL community today paying tribute.
Yeah, look, a really thoughtful, polite, good young fella.
Very challenging and morbid time for the family. So love to you, Jake and Anne, and we're thinking of you.
According to the latest figures, 183 lives have been lost on Victorian roads this year, up 2.8% on the same time last year. In fact, the number of fatalities has been climbing post-COVID. Motorcyclist deaths are up 76% on the same period last year, from 25 to 44. Pedestrian deaths are up 41% from 22 to 31.
It's just tragic that we have surpassed last year's number of lives lost already this year. And I think what's more tragic is that so many families, friends, colleagues are now suffering.
Advocates say it's nothing new. Speeding, not driving to the conditions, drinking and driving, driving tired, all these factors are contributing to the rising toll. They say everybody has a role to play when it comes to keeping the community safe. Alexandra Alvaro, ABC News.
TAFE teachers walked off the job today over stalled pay negotiations. After a rallying meeting at Melbourne's Athenaeum Theatre, dozens of Victorian TAFE teachers marched to Parliament House demanding a pay rise. It's the first time in more than a decade the group has walked off the job. Today, they were venting frustration that pay negotiations have dragged on for more than 2 years. They're threatening more industrial action unless a new pay deal is confirmed.
2 years in negotiations is too long. We shouldn't have been waiting this long. The frustration of our members is palpable. They want to see a result. They want to be valued and respected for the important work they do.
Coming up on 7:30 with Sarah Ferguson tonight, the perks being offered to lure people back into the office.
I won't sit here and tell you that there's ping pong being played 5 days a week, but it does make for fun on a Friday afternoon.
The state premier is going to recognise the value of the centre of their city, the CBDs that need a boost.
Most productive in the office, 100%.
It's expensive to go to work 5 days a week. It's not just the commute, it's the lunch, it's the outfit that you're wearing to work.
Australia's Domestic Violence Commissioner says more resources are urgently needed amid a national crisis of men's violence against women. Today, Michaela Cronin delivered her first progress report on the national plan to end gendered violence. She says there's a critical need to talk more with men about their violent behaviours and put greater focus on sexual violence. The Commissioner also reiterated calls for more frontline services funding.
Our service systems are overwhelmed, stretched beyond capacity. They are struggling to hold on to staff, and they are really at wit's end.
And this comes as in Sydney, a woman and her 2 children have survived a terrifying encounter. Police say her estranged husband had travelled from Victoria with a gun to hunt them down. He also shot a member of the public who's now recovering in hospital.
A woman was seeking refuge at her parents' Auburn home with her 2 children. They're from Victoria and she was trying to escape her husband. But last night, he found them.
The male became enraged, has smashed the front window of the premises and forced open the front doors but did not enter the premises.
The 50-year-old went to the house just after 10 p.m, armed with a gun. He pointed it at his father-in-law, who is in his 70s, and pulled the trigger, but it failed to fire. He then turned the gun towards his mother-in-law and fired a shot into the house, which missed everyone inside.
We heard the bangs and the people were screaming. Very scary.
I'm very thankful at this stage that we don't have yet another DV-related homicide on our hands.
The man left the home and tried to carjack another man and his teenage daughter nearby. He fired a shot into their car, hitting the 55-year-old driver in the neck. He was taken to hospital in a stable condition.
Traumatic experience for his daughter that was in the car at the time that managed to contact 000.
The gunman was found dead in a nearby creek several hours after he targeted his family. The couple had been together for 23 years and have 2 children, a 20-year-old son and a 15-year-old daughter. They were both here last night when their father fired a gun into the home.
There's a lot of shock and distress in the family at the moment, and the wealth of support is going around the family to ensure that we're providing everything humanly possible.
Police say there were no recent reports of domestic violence involving the family in New South Wales or Victoria. But detectives are still investigating what led them to flee their home state. Leah Harris, ABC News, Sydney.
Jetstar has joined the ranks of its parent company Qantas in facing a class action over flights that were cancelled during COVID. The claim, launched by the same firm Echo Law, alleges Jetstar failed to refund money to hundreds of thousands of customers, instead giving them flight credits. Many customers ended up paying the airline more money to use those credits to rebook their flights. Both class actions are seeking refunds and compensation for customers. Many of us have embraced the joys of shopping online, with offers like free shipping and no-cost returns offered as enticements. But businesses are starting to wind back those incentives to help save costs, with some risking a customer backlash.
Workers at this online lingerie retailer are packaging up hundreds of orders a day.
Free shipping over $99 and otherwise it's $8.99, which is less than it costs us.
But Curvy is now upping these costs as its own margins fall and delivery costs rise.
Why can't you just give me free shipping on everything?
With Australia Post rising their prices significantly, particularly recently, we don't have the margins to do that.
Australia Post says its prices are competitive. Other retailers like the iconic David Jones, Kogan and Chemist Warehouse have also upped delivery thresholds in recent times.
A lot of retailers have found how unsustainable it is to give away everything for nothing.
Data from the tech company shows that fewer retailers are offering free shipping, with the number down 11% from 5 years ago. The average shipping cost has risen to more than $10. And retailers are now telling customers it'll take almost 6 days to get them an order. ShipIt's data also shows that retailers like ASOS are ending free returns.
The challenge for a lot of retailers is if you've offered free returns, can I take it away? And as soon as you take it away, your sales drop.
Environmental advocates say this might actually be a good thing because free returns have been incentivising us to buy stuff we don't necessarily know we want and then return it.
Curvy only offers free returns on faulty products, and sometimes they don't always get back their own product.
What's the weirdest return you've ever had?
We've definitely had scissors, light bulbs.
Delivering a shock in the mail for retailers. Amelia Turzon, ABC News.
To finance now, and both the local share market and the Aussie dollar kept rising today. Here's Alan Kohler.
Jackson Hole kicks off tomorrow. That's the name of the annual symposium of central bankers and economists hosted by the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, in a valley in Wyoming called Jackson Hole, which is 1,000 miles from Kansas City. But it looks like this, which is a bit nicer than the biggest city in Missouri. All eyes will be on the speech by Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, and he's expected to confirm that US interest rates are about to be cut. So the US dollar has been weakening ahead of Jackson Hole, which is why the Aussie dollar has been rising and went up again today. And gold has been rising as well to a new record high last night, partly because of the weak US dollar, but mainly because of Chinese buying, both by the People's Bank of China avoiding US treasuries and private Chinese investors avoiding the collapsing property market. This is the third great gold bull market since the link between the US dollar and gold was broken by Richard Nixon on August the 15th, 1971, in what is known as the Nixon shock, finally ending the backing of money by gold. And this chart from Bloomberg today is quite interesting. It's the main US share market index, the S&P 500, expressed in gold rather than dollars. And well, it's the same as it was in 1971. The S&P 500 ended its 7-day winning streak last night, but the Aussie market did not. The streak goes on. 9 days now. I don't think there's been one of those since 2016. Today's big profit season winners were finance company Hum Group and tech business WiseTech, whose founder, CEO and largest shareholder Richard White made an extra $1.7 billion today. And that is definitely finance.
Australian Paralympic swimmer Lakeisha Patterson says the prospect of going for her third consecutive gold medal is a privilege. Patterson has won the past 2 Paralympic gold medals in her classification in the women's 400 metres freestyle event. The Dolphins team is preparing for next week's Paralympic Games at a French training base before relocating to Paris. She says the excitement ahead of her third Games is just the same as it was for her first 2 in Rio and Tokyo.
Chasing an elusive gold medal is what everyone wants. It's the dream. It's such a privilege and an honour. So to be vying for that for the third time now is really special and a real privilege and honour to be able to do that.
Port Adelaide is set to challenge Dan Houston's 5-match ban for his bump on Adelaide's Isaac Rankin during last weekend's AFL showdown. The suspension means the All-Australian defender might have played his last game for the Power, as the 27-year-old is said to be wanting to move back home to Victoria.
It's season over for one of Port Adelaide's most important players. Dan Houston was outed for 5 matches after this hit on Isaac Rankin, leaving the Crows star concussed. It means Houston would be suspended, even if the Power were to get all the way to the grand final. The club is appealing the verdict in an effort to reduce the ban and possibly get the 27-year-old back later in the final series. The Bulldogs season is also on the line ahead of a crucial clash with Greater Western Sydney. The match will have added importance for Luke Beveridge, who will break the club record for number of games coached, passing Bulldogs legend Ted Whitten.
I've got a bit left to give, so at some point I'll reflect on it. But it's important, I think, more than ever, this week that our focus is on the team.
Ireland's AFL Games record holder Zach Tui is set to call time on his football journey at the end of the year. The 34-year-old midfielder has enjoyed a remarkable career across both Geelong and Carlton after being recruited out of Ireland in 2010, and he's just one of 3 Irish players to win an AFL premiership.
I just wanted to thank you for everything. Geelong, the club and the city has been incredible for me and my family. I consider myself a Geelong person forever.
And after missing selection last week, Dyson Heppell will get a chance to farewell the Essendon faithful in the Bombers' last game of the season. Out of finals contention, Saturday's clash against Brisbane will be Heppell's 253rd and final game in the red and black. Fraser Fife, ABC News.
Australian tennis player Nick Kyrgios says it's ridiculous that the world number 1 Jannik Sinner has escaped a suspension after testing positive to a banned substance. Sinner twice tested positive to an anabolic steroid in March, and an independent tribunal accepted his explanation that the substance inadvertently entered his system through massages and sports therapy. The 23-year-old Italian will lose the prize money and rankings points from the Indian Wells tournament where he recorded one of his positive tests. On social media, Kyrgios posted that Sinner should have been suspended for 2 years due to an enhanced performance and cast doubt on the reason for the positive tests. Sinner says he'll put the deeply unfortunate period behind him as he prepares for next week's US Open. Let's go to the weather now, and last night's patchy rain and isolated storms moved eastwards out to sea early this morning. Overnight lows mostly range between 8 and 11 degrees. It got down to 1 at Mount Hotham last night. Today it was a mild and partly cloudy day with isolated showers over most districts. They became more concentrated in the southwest and around the northeast ranges through the day. The state's top of 20 was recorded at Swan Hill, Walpyup and Mount Nawanawa. In Melbourne, we had some thunderstorms across the eastern suburbs today, and we reached our high of 19.2 degrees at around 2:30 this afternoon. In the city now, it's 16. Interstate today, it was mostly sunny in Sydney, Brisbane and Darwin. Perth and Adelaide had showers, and it was cloudy in Hobart. The satellite image is showing a broad band of thick cloud over Tassie, southeast Victoria and the coastal fringes of New South Wales. There's low cloud over southwestern WA, eastern Queensland and northwestern New South Wales. A cold front over our south will clear eastern districts tonight as a high-pressure system moves over southern New South Wales. That will extend a ridge across Victoria tomorrow before moving over the Tasman Sea on Friday, with winds tending warmer northerly as a trough approaches from the west. There'll be showers and thunderstorms over southwest WA tomorrow, and gusty showers over parts of South Australia, Victoria, Tassie and New South Wales, falling as snow on the Alps. For the capital cities, there'll be showers in Perth, Adelaide and Hobart. It'll be cloudy in Sydney and sunny in Brisbane and Darwin, where it's going to get to 35. Back home, we're heading for a cool to mild day with light to moderate northwesterly winds and patchy morning fog in the north and east. It'll be partly cloudy with isolated showers, most likely during the morning and afternoon. And there's a chance of thunderstorms for the north and east too. Showers will fall as snow above 1,500 metres. On the bay, a northwesterly wind will run to 15 knots. Waves won't top a metre, and there will be strong winds along the west coast. Thursday in Melbourne will be partly cloudy with a medium chance of showers, probably in the morning. We're heading for a top of 18 down to 11 tonight. Then there'll be more showers on Friday, 19, and the same goes for the foreseeable. 22 on both Saturday and Sunday, a top of 18 on Monday, then 19 degrees on both Tuesday and Wednesday at this stage. And that's it for this evening's bulletin. Stay with us now for 7:30 with Sarah Ferguson. Good night.